What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Early Edge. It is Wild Card Weekend. I don't know that we can even call it the weekend anymore because we have two games on Monday now. We know that Bills game just got moved, but we've got two games today to talk about. I see everybody in the chat. The chat is completely lit up. Absolutely love that. Please hit the like button. Let's look at the recap screen from yesterday. I actually lost a golf round bet. That's the first time in 2024. I lose that one, but we win 2 out of 3 thanks to Chip. And thanks to Buckets. And by the way, before I bring in the star of the show, or a star of the show, let me talk about the Sports Podcast Awards. We are a finalist for the best fantasy betting and gaming category in the Sports Podcast Awards. To help us bring home some hardware, use the link in the description to go vote. Voting is open until January 28th, so hit the link and vote for the Early Edge. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I kind of spoiled it for you. I told you there's a star of the show I'm bringing on. We were going to have stars of the show, but due to circumstances, one person couldn't make it today.
Uh-oh. Sia? Disconnected? Well, looks like it's me. Danny, you're up, says Doug Horner in the comments. And Sia's frozen, so I guess I'll take over, guys. And man, we've got a wild card weekend ahead of us here in the AFC. And this is exciting, man. We've got Texans Browns and we've got Chiefs Dolphins. And first up, man, I'm excited to talk about this game. Sia, I'm hoping he comes back, but I guess I'm going to go solo Danny. And with my host debut here for SportsLine, appreciate the support in the comments here. Man, I guess we'll go right into some official picks here if we must. And first off, we have the Texans Browns coming up. And I'm actually looking at a defensive player prop on the Browns side here. My official pick for this game is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah over 7.5 tackles plus assists. This is a guy that I've been targeting on the defensive side of the ball in terms of player props for a few games this season. I've really been impressed with his play. And his number at 7.5 is a little higher than a lot of games that he's typically logged around that 6-7 mark. But I think it's because it's a playoff atmosphere. He's going to be playing with that kind of field general intensity. Pro Bowl caliber linebacker this season is Koramoah. And in his last game against the Texans just a couple weeks ago, he had 6 tackles, but he also had 2 passes deflected and an interception. I mean, this guy's all over the field. So I think he's going to have an impact in this game, and it'll probably be on the back of some tackles in a game that should expect offense. So, yeah, give me Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah over 7.5 tackles plus assists and putting his mark on this game. Guy that won an ACC Defensive Player of the Year in his time in Notre Dame. So, guy that I'm looking forward to. All right, what's next? Well, hopefully Sia can get back soon. But, yeah, taking a look at the total in that game, been really interested. I guess I'll just continue to remark on some angles in that game. And it's been kind of stuck on that 44.5 number for quite a while. Finally budges up to 45. And in terms of the betting market, I've seen a lot of money and bets coming in on that over. We've seen that and there's Sia, he's coming back. Sia, I was just talking about the total in this game, but I'll let you take over host duties. Go for it.
So, by the way, thanks for taking over while an internet issue I've never had before just popped up. So thank you for taking over there. But let me ask you about the total because, you know, when this opened, and maybe you already said this, when it opened at 44, and of course we're talking Texans Browns here, I thought it was low. And now it's up to what, 44.5 at BetMGM, 44.5 in most places. 45 at BetMGM. So I think people are seeing what I thought I saw initially, Danny Brasco. What's your lean here? Am I just kind of buying into the Flacco and CJ Stroud magic?
It was weird because I agree with you. It felt a touch low considering Joe Flacco's only played to the over since he's come onto the Browns. They've really let him go, gunslinging to Amari Cooper. And not only is he putting up offense, but the Browns have played to 8 straight road overs because the defense also isn't quite the same when they go on the road. They've been letting up a lot more points per game on the road. At home, vaunted. I mean, the EPA per play and all the advanced metrics, like you can't touch the Cleveland Browns defense at home. On the road, different story. So what's with the lower total? Finally, it ekes up half a point to 45, which is a pretty key number. I don't know. All the signs making me feel under just to be a contrarian, like I like to be, Sia. But the game script and the numbers say over.
Yeah, and also, it does look like we looked at the inactive list, or we saw the inactive list come out, 20 minutes ago. It looks like Noah Brown, Robert Woods are playing. So that certainly helps the over, because as good as this Cleveland Browns defense is, we have seen their splits. They're not great, which, for the record, leads me to my pick. If you guys have questions in the chat, go ahead and put them in there. Me and Danny will try to address them. But I like the Browns money line here. I put it in on SportsLine a couple of days ago. I've got the Browns money line -130. Listen, if you want to take the -2 at -110, I mean, I don't think the number's necessarily going to come into play, but I just prefer, because it's only -130. I'm not having to pay -140 or even -135. I just think the Browns are the all-around better team. I do worry about Flacco being turnover prone, and I understand CJ Stroud really can take care of the ball, but we did see CJ Stroud get some pressure from the Indianapolis Colts. Again, that game was in Houston as well. And they almost got to him a couple times. He had to make a couple of back foot throws that, again, CJ Stroud's a great quarterback. He was able to do. I don't know that he gets away with it against the Browns. And granted, CJ Stroud, he's only thrown 5 interceptions on the year. His touchdown to interception ratio is unbelievable. It wouldn't shock me at all if he throws an interception in this game. And by the way, Devin Singletary, who I had a rushing and receiving prop on last week, I lost that one because he was extremely inefficient. And I wonder, as one-dimensional as the Browns are likely going to be, I think the Texans could be one-dimensional too. Now, it does help that the receiver core is all healthy. But at the end of the day, again, I think the Browns are the better team. They're certainly the better defense. And we know that Texans secondary can get exposed by any quarterback, frankly, including Joe Flacco, who exposed them just, 2-3 weeks ago when these two teams met. So my pick, Danny, is the Browns money line. Before we get to your pick in this game, and by the way, we're going to talk about all the other picks from everybody at SportsLine or that from the prop show, from some of these shows. We'll put that up on the board. So don't worry about that. But Danny, any reaction to my play? I do feel like, listen, I love that you're on the show because you usually are on the contrarian side. The Texans really have been the contrarian play all week. I mean, I think a lot of people really wanted to jump on to the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and by the way, Sia, while you were out, I gave my official pick in this game, which was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah over 7.5 tackles plus assists on the defensive side of the ball. Now, let me react to your pick on the Browns. I really wanted to get to Browns as well, and you got a good number at -130. I see they're up to almost about -150 on some books. So on the money line, I kind of like that. But I did take a little sprinkle on the Texans +2.5. I'm seeing sharp move to 1.5 on that news that you just mentioned with Brown in. And I don't know, CJ Stroud just got that X factor about him that I feel like we can't quite account for. I know, of course, there's a troubling record for rookie quarterbacks in their first matchup, their first debut in the playoffs against a quarterback with playoff experience. Bad straight up record. But I also think that maybe Joe Flacco is a regression candidate. He's had such an insane air raid offense to begin his campaign with the Browns. Maybe there's a world where, yes, certainly we know Texas secondary is liable to give up points, but maybe there's a world he comes back to earth and he's the one throwing interceptions in this game. So I think it's going to be a tight game, and I do like the Texans. What I did see is I teased the Texans up through a possession. That was a good way I felt like playing the spread in this game.
Oh, I love that. I mean, if we're talking you're teasing the Texans and you're getting +8.5, I absolutely love that. I would be on that side too, and I would try to middle it. I'll say this. You're right. I mean, a lot of the data that I looked at, a lot of the stats that are openly available about Joe Flacco, he's 100% a regression candidate. And by the way, he's playing hero ball a lot. Like this is Brett Favre ball, where like some of these are inches away from being tipped or intercepted. However, the question remains, when does that regression happen? Does it happen against this Texans secondary? And that's what you have to ask yourself, because by the way, it's not just the Texans receivers that are healthy. We got Elijah Moore healthy. We got David Njoku healthy. We've got Amari Cooper healthy. So David Bell is in the conversation. There's a lot to, in Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, they catch passes too. So there's a lot to deliver when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. By the way, speaking of Elijah Moore, when I gave out my rapid fire Friday picks, that's I posted that on Twitter for those of you that want to take a look at it. I took Elijah Moore's over 36.5 receiving yards. Now, the only reason that's not an official play here is because it's kind of skyrocketed. I shouldn't say skyrocketed. It went up to 38.5. It's 40.5 in some places. And the 38.5 was at pretty prohibitive juice. It was 38.5. So you lost a little bit of value, but it was also -130. So I wasn't really willing to recommend that. So if you like Elijah Moore props, I just do want to put it out there. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he gets 40 plus. He does enjoy a lot of air yards. And again, healthy receiver core, probably a lot of attention on Amari Cooper, especially after what he did to the Texans just a few weeks ago, 265 yards, I believe it's 11 catches. So I do think Elijah Moore maybe sees a few more open looks. Let's put up the picks. We got Josh on the 1s and 2s today. Let's put up some of the picks that really not just me and Danny have put out here, but a lot of us have put out. Dave's picks, EC's picks, RJ's got picks here. Now these spill over to the Chiefs game, but I just want everybody to see what we have on this game, because we're going to get to our gem and then we're going to get to obviously the next game. But in this game, we've got CJ Stroud from Dave Richard over 33.5 pass attempts. We've got David Njoku over 5.5 receptions at plus 100. I do kind of like Njoku's yardage, although it has been inflated quite a bit. It's in that 57.5, 56.5 mark. I don't mind that. Devin Singletary under 83.5 rushing and receiving yards. I like that from Dave. Other picks from this particular game. Looks like RJ's got that Texans tease that you were talking about, Danny Brasco, plus 8.5. And along with that, he's got the Cowboys minus 1.5. I like that tease quite a bit. EC's got CJ Stroud over 1.5 touchdown passes at plus 125. That's an interesting one. And Danny, Dolphins, Chiefs, under 44. I mean, I like the under. I also like the first half under, Danny. And I don't know if you want to speak to this, but at a lot of books, that first half under is 21 now. It's 21.5 at some books still. Do you like, I know you like the overall under. Do you like the under 21.5?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think you could play that both ways. The Chiefs have a fantastic record to the under when playing at home in Arrowhead Stadium. We know about the weather conditions, but despite those weather conditions, over the last 2 seasons, 16-3 to the under is Patrick Mahomes as the Chiefs quarterback when playing at home. And of course, this year they're leaning on that defense. I think in the second half, I believe it's 15-2 to the second half under in their last 17 home games. So the trends certainly support Kansas City at home. Think about a championship caliber team like them. They're often playing with the lead, looking to hold that in half, relying on that defense and run game. And especially in a game like this, I think that could be a good angle. So I like second half under. I like full game under as well.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go to, we got some questions in the chat. Browns now minus 1.5 at some books from Dan Clark. Oh, J.R. Hunt says, anyone know where I can find Danny's UFC article? Danny, can you answer that?
Yeah, man. If you go on SportsLine and you go under analysis and MMA, you can find me. I'm Danny Brasco is the nickname. I'm also Daniel Vitlani. You'll find me under my SportsLine profile where I write NFL articles as well as UFC articles. You can find those under analysis, MMA, and I have all the write-ups on the fights that are coming up in 15 minutes. See, we got a UFC fight night as well coming up.
So it's really easy to go to that analysis tab. I think some people, they don't realize how versatile sort of the app is, because generally they'll go to picks. Some of these picks aren't available on the app in terms of like just putting, let's say, a UFC pick in. So they're in article form. But you go to the SportsLine app, you go to sportsline.com. Again, all you have to click it on is analysis, and then you'll get some of those other picks that you can't necessarily put in on the app. So go ahead and check that out. A lot of my golf picks, when I publish those picks, a lot of them will be in that analysis tab as well, as opposed to the picks tab. All right, let's have some fun, Danny. How about first touchdown score at plus 1,000 or higher? You know how we do it here. I already mentioned this guy, so let me just go ahead and mention him again. I think Elijah Moore could have a big game, and I do think a lot of attention is going to be paid to Amari Cooper and David Njoku for a good reason. I do think Elijah Moore could get loose, maybe for a long play early. And I think that'll certainly loosen up that defense. But I do like Elijah Moore in this game in general, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's the first touchdown scorer. How about you, Danny?
I mean, yeah, see, I got to get like you. Look at all those gems. I need to get on the board here. I'm going to go with the rookie wonder, CJ Stroud. I actually took a little half unit play myself on his over 11.5 rushing yards. So why not put in a game script in my head where, he's under pressure from Myles Garrett and that's high sack rate, pressure rate, the defensive front that the Browns get. He's got to take off, use the wheels, maybe in the red zone, and he gets in first for plus 2,600. Give me CJ Stroud.
I love it. I think we can move on from that. If you have somebody you want to throw out there for a first touchdown score, please feel free. By the way, interesting note from Japan. If you remember, those of you that aren't familiar with Japan, he was the one last week that was saying during our kickoff show at 12 and on our Sunday Night Football show Khalil Shakir overs. He laddered it up to, I mean, he was very specific about it. Borderline annoying about it, if I'm being honest. I wasn't annoyed, but I'm sure maybe some people are like, what is this guy talking about Khalil Shakir? Well, Khalil Shakir went off. So Japan has Isaiah Pacheco, 50-plus rushing yards in each half at plus 1,400. That's interesting, and it's a good transition to the next game we're about to get to. So plus 1,400 is a pretty great number if you think Isaiah Pacheco is going to be running the ball a lot. And by the way, that kind of leads into my official pick. So we're going to talk Kansas City. We're going to talk the Miami Dolphins in a second. But real quick about BetMGM. New BetMGM customers can sign up today and get this, $158 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $5 and you'll receive $158 instantly in bonus bets, regardless of your wager's outcome, with bonus code EDGE158. That's EDGE158. All right. Place your bets at BetMGM and place your bets on this Dolphins-Chiefs game. Now, Japan brought up Isaiah Pacheco. And Danny, it's hard for me to get away from the two notions. One is an official play that I've put in. And the other is, how does Miami win this game? It's basically a rhetorical question. Listen, if you want to make the argument in the chat that Miami can win, or maybe a reason why you think they're going to cover, and Danny, maybe you have reasons in that regard. But this Miami team is so down and out from an injury standpoint. I believe in Mike McDaniel. Waddle looks to be somewhat healthy. Hopefully he's not just a decoy. But at the end of the day, I just don't see how the Dolphins can hang with this Chiefs team. Not that the Chiefs are very good, but again, you're down three of your three best pass rushers, essentially. You're down a guy in the linebacking core, and on the back end, your secondary is all kinds of injured. So this actually leads me to my official pick, which, again, I'll reference Japan again. It's Isaiah Pacheco. I'm not going to go for his yardage, although I think that's okay. If he gets 4 yards per carry, he's probably going to eclipse his yardage mark. I'm going to take his rushing attempts. My official play in this game is Isaiah Pacheco over 15.5 rushing attempts. He's hit this in 4 of his last 6 games, and we know when it becomes playoff time, your RB1 is going to be the workhorse, especially in these conditions. I honestly could see Pacheco hitting probably 18 carries here, so I think we're getting a very fair number. Now, the backups, when it comes to Isaiah Pacheco, like they just don't get a lot of work. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a big game, he's just not going to get a lot of work. And again, Pacheco's hit this in 4 of his last 6 games, and he got the opportunity to rest last game when Kansas City played the Chargers. So this is one of those situations where it's pretty ideal for the run game in general, and Pacheco is easily the RB1 with really not much by way of sharing responsibilities with the rest of the running backs on that squad. So, Danny, real quick. So that's my pick. And I do think Isaiah Pacheco is going to be a workhorse in this game, but answer that other question for me. I mean, like, I haven't put in the official play yet. And the line has grown from 3.5 to 4.5 to 5. What's the argument for Miami?
I don't know if I have one, counselor. I think I have to second your motion here and look towards the Chiefs if I'm going to play a side. You guys saw that I have a play on the total, but I have to just say this much, Sia. I mean, you guys might be familiar with one of the greatest comedies of all time, The Other Guys, starring Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. And I have to ask, the Dolphins are going into cold Kansas City. A lion swimming in the ocean? Lions don't even like water. How is a dolphin going to go into 0 degrees, below 0 temperatures with some wind in Kansas City and succeed? Sia, I know you said recently in a video that you don't like people putting in your betting group chat trends that go back dating to the Reagan administration. Well, how about I give you one going back to the Bush administration, at least. Last 20 years, Dolphins playing games under 40 degrees, 8-19. So I think that applies, again, to just a comfortable team in their own, kind of hotter atmosphere. Tua thriving at home, Tyreek Hill in that offense, so explosive in their atmosphere. But in this one, in the stiff cold, I could see this, like I said, turning into a war in the trenches. And at home, I think that favors KC. So I look to them maybe on the money line, maybe as a parlay piece. I don't know if I'm going to lay that spread. I'll let you say that. But for this kind of game, I'm taking the under 44 here. And by the way, I wanted to address one thing in the comments. Someone mentioned that the total hasn't moved yet. All the people seem to be on the under. It actually has moved. It opened at 47.5. And when the weather reports initially came out, sharp moved down to 44.5. And we've seen it climb all the way down to 43.5 now. So I got it here at 44, and I think it's a good play.
Let me ask you this: at 43.5, would you like the under there? And as far as the first half under, this is something I referenced earlier, but probably in the wrong game here. the under of 21.5 for the first half. Do you like that as well?
Sorry, Sia, can you say that again?
So the first total I want to ask you about is if it's 43.5, do you still like the under? And do you like the first half under of 21.5?
First half, it's tough. First half unders are tougher. I want to see. I'm not sure how the game will open up as so much as my feeling that the total number is a good play at that key number, because 43, we've heard M Squared talk about it all season, is a super key number, as is 44. So I think 43 is the bottom that you should buy there, and I would still take it at that number. In terms of the first half, can't quite speak to that. I'm not so much of a halves total better, but I do like it above the key number of 43. So I'd still take the under there.
By the way, Taylor DeHart says Noah Gray over 8.5 receiving yards. He says, I know it will be cold, but someone will catch a ball or two, and this can happen in one play. I think that's a pretty sharp play. In fact, when we get to the gems, you might see Noah Gray's name. But what do you think about Taylor DeHart's play? Do you like Noah Gray? Listen, there's a lot of pass catchers for the Kansas City Chiefs, but Noah Gray's emerged as one of the more reliable ones, right, Danny?
Yeah, he kind of has. It's like Russian roulette trying to, pick a Chiefs receiver. You try to take a Valdez Scantling prop or a Watson prop or Kadarius Toney prop, and you never know what draw you're going to get. So I don't mind it, though. He's almost like the Travis Kelce decoy, and Gray has shown to be a reliable target for Mahomes, who will rely on anybody he can, anybody who's willing to keep their hands on the ball in this game. So, yeah, I don't mind it at all.
By the way, Bradley Jacobs says The Other Guys is the most underrated comedy of all time. I don't know that we can dispute that necessarily. And Capper Taylor says, I object. Overrules. No, I strenuously object. Do you know what movie that's from, Danny Brasco?
I strenuously object. I can't say I do off the top.
Those of you in the chat, by the way, two things. Hit the like button. And two, tell me what movie that is from. And if everybody doesn't get it right, I'm going to be very, very upset. Okay, so we have your under of 44. Now, Prop Stars from the Prop Show, he has Tua Tagovailoa's under 239.5 passing yards. Danny, I kind of like that one too. I mean, granted, I understand that Jalen Waddle appears to be healthy here, but this Kansas City defense is for real. And I do think the path to victory for both of these teams, frankly, is through the running game. But I think that's specifically, especially given these weather conditions, for the Miami Dolphins. Like, I do think it's going to be a lot of Devin Achane and maybe some Mostert, again, if he's as healthy as they're leading on. But I kind of like the under here. It seems a little too high for me. What do you think?
Yeah, so earlier in this in the year, I mentioned I vowed to never take unders on passing yard totals anymore. Even if I did like the number and I leaned under, it would just be a pass for me, simply because negative game scripts can cause so much variance. I would lose unders earlier this season on like Zach Wilson passing yards after an absolute dud of a game in the fourth quarter, a random 70-yard bomb to Garrett Wilson, and there you go. My bet is toast, right? So sometimes those can happen if a team's playing from behind and they're forced to pass. But I got to agree, in an environment like this, I think Miami would be best suited to utilize the run. That's the weakness for Kansas City. They have a poor rush success rate on defense. Their secondary, Trent McDuffie, those guys grade out really well in the corners. If you're going to beat Miami, you want to keep the ball, you want to ground and pound, and especially in this atmosphere, that's what they might look to do. So I lean under for sure, Sia. Are
there any receivers you would key on? Like, I'm looking at Jalen Waddle, 45.5 receiving yards.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tyreek Hill's going to be big. It's 81.5. I don't know how healthy Jalen Waddle is. I mean, I actually would lean towards his under here. And for the record, on the Kansas City side, I mean, I'm just looking at Rashee Rice, 63.5. I'm looking at Travis Kelce, 55.5. I don't hate the Rashee Rice unders either, especially when you look at his receptions. I think it's as high as 6.5. I don't know. Like, to me, like fading some of these big time, because here's the thing. Here's what happens. We have the weather issues, but typically when it comes to the high profile receivers, those numbers aren't as affected as maybe some of these like second tier receivers. So I still think there's value in taking the unders on some of these guys. Any of those four names that I pointed out, do you lean towards the under?
Yeah, those are all interesting. Like, the health of Waddle makes it a really tough pick, but I'm thinking about how low his total is. And is that because everyone's thinking he's going to be hurt and Hill's going to get the attention? Last week, I cashed a small play on Hill under 97.5 receiving yards, and I felt that total was way too high. So oftentimes you can fade a star with a really inflated number. Now we see the opposite with Waddle coming back from injury. It's a super low number. So I'm wondering if maybe the over is worth a shot. But again, the injury concerns make it a no play for me. And then looking on the other side of the ball, it's interesting how you bring up Rashee Rice in relation to Travis Kelce. Rashee Rice's receiving yard total is higher than Travis Kelce. And this season, it's been tough to bet on Travis Kelce. He has one game where he, goes crazy for Taylor Swift and has a historic game. And the next few, he ends up looking like a ghost, and Noah Gray is outperforming him. So Rice has been a more reliable target. I'm interested to see the Dolphins secondary play out. Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey looking like they're healthy for this game. They're going to play a lot of man coverage. It's a tight call on a lot of these, and I didn't make any bets on these player props, but I think the lines are super interesting, and I agree with you, Sia. If I'm going to lean anyway, I think it's under on kind of star players.
I think this is an interesting game because we don't exactly know how the weather is going to affect this game, particularly the passing game. And we're making assumptions. I'm certainly making assumptions that it's going to be a depressed passing game, but these numbers are what they are. And if it looks like these two teams, and I'm kind of thinking on the Kansas City side in particular, but if it looks like these two teams are going to be able to pass the ball maybe a little easier than we thought, I think there's some live betting opportunities here in a big way. And I'm not necessarily referring to Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. I'm referring to guys that might be seeing the field like Justin Watson, McCole Hardman. Both of those are sub 20 yards. Like if McCole Hardman's on the field and if passing doesn't seem to be a huge problem, McCole Hardman over 14.5 receiving yards, I don't mind. Justin Watson over 18.5 receiving yards, I don't mind. I just think this is an interesting time to look. And if Jalen Waddle looks healthy, by the way, and it's a negative game script and it looks like Tua has time to throw, then maybe if he doesn't get a catch on, let's say it's for his first or second drive, that 41 or 45.5 becomes 37.5 pretty quickly. So live overs when it comes to, or maybe even unders, but in this case, overs when it comes to this game, this is a really good game to key on to see what the game flow is actually like, because we're all making assumptions. And Dana, you brought it up in terms of how bad Miami is in this type of weather. Well, maybe we see early that it looks like they're going to be okay. And all of a sudden, some of these live overs, Durham Smythe, 18.5 yards. That last week, by the way, Durham Smythe, his prop was 25.5 receiving yards, I believe. We talked about him on the show. It went down to 11.5 yards because he didn't have a catch. This was in the second quarter, and I hit that. And he got a catch like literally 5 minutes later and hit that prop. So don't forget about some of these live betting opportunities. You'll be able to see it for yourself whether or not the passing game or the running game is effective. By the way, Mike McClure, Chiefs -3.5. He's on that. And Maestro is also on the Chiefs -3.5. I honestly think I'm going to probably make this an official play. I have time to do it. I came with one official pick, and of course it was the Isaiah Pacheco over 15.5 carries. But here are all the plays for really both games on Saturday. We went over the Texan one, the Texan Browns ones, but obviously you can see the ones for the Chiefs here, Larry and Mike McClure's pick. You see PropStar's pick, Tua's under 239.5 passing yards, and then we've been over Danny Brasco's under 44. But we got to have a little bit more fun, right, Danny Brasco? Because you got to get one of these gems. Now, in your defense, you haven't been on every single primetime show. I have, so it's a lot easier for me to get 6. Now, granted, other people have been on a lot of shows. They don't have anything close to 6. So I'm just going to go ahead and pat myself on the back a little bit. But you, my friend, haven't had nearly as many opportunities as I have. So very interesting. Talk to me about your pick here.
If I hit this one, Sia, I want 2 gems just for the culture, because Kadarius Toney is a guy that was expected to really take up a big spot in his offense with the departure of some, key receivers and looking like, who's the next man up. And to begin the season, all he had was follies and mistakes and fumbles and key situations and drops. And the guy has not been a contributor that the Chiefs had hoped he would be. How poetic would it be for him to be the first one to get in the playoffs and wake up this Kansas City offense that everyone is wondering, when are they going to wake up and how could they possibly make a Super Bowl defense run with this version of their offense? Maybe Kadarius Toney, who I told my girlfriend to draft in her fantasy league. And thank goodness we were able to overcome that poor selection and drop him and pick up Puka Nacua. But in this case, we'll look back to Kadarius Toney plus 3,100 to get in first for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Imagine dropping Kadarius Toney and being like, hey, this Puka Nacua guy, I think he's going to be somebody. Like, did you win your fantasy? Did she win her fantasy league?
We came in second, but she found him on the waiver wire. So shouts to her if she's watching.
Honestly, like, she probably should have broken up with you for the Kadarius. if I'm being real.
It's her league. It's her league. It's her league.
Fair enough. By the way, everybody, most everybody got a few good men. That's what that quote was from, Danny Brasco, the strenuously object one. Some people had some interesting guesses, like what was it? I can't remember. Liar Liar was one of the guesses. Yeah, they were deep from Demon Slayer. By the way, somebody, it was Bradley Jacobs, says, Sia, what is your favorite movie? If I had to guess, I'd go with Good Will Hunting. Okay, it's a really good guess.
Great movie.
Good Will Hunting is certainly a top 10 movie for me. I have like kind of a weird top 3. Danny, I'm going to ask you for your top 3 before I get to my gem, just because I want to have a little bit of fun here. And by the way, if you want to put your top 3 or maybe your favorite movie, go ahead and put it in the chat. My top 3 are A Few Good Men. I love that movie. I can quote the entire movie, as some of you know that follow me on social media. Glory, kind of an older movie. And White Men Can't Jump. And that was more because I played a lot of basketball during those days, and it was just a fun movie that I personally could identify with. Danny, do you got a top 3?
Man, I'm like one of those guys that are like, oh, what's your favorite? I like all kinds of music. You're like, it's so hard for me. But I will give you this. My favorite book ever is Shogun right here. And they are making it into a series on, I think, FX. And it looks absolutely phenomenal. So Shogun, check out the series if you want to watch that. If you're into the book, highly, highly recommend it.
I'd like Josh Mullinex to let us know in the private chat what his top 3 movies are, by the way. But we got some Fight Club. That's a good one. Deer Hunter, American History X from Demon Slayer, Royal Tenenbaums, You Heard Me, and Coltrane. Okay, I haven't heard of 2 of those movies, so I got to catch up on some of this. Go ahead, Danny.
My childhood friend, I went to elementary school, Jonah Meyerson, shout out to him. He was one of the children of in the Royal Tenenbaums. He played one of the kids.
Oh, wow. All right. All right. Well, let me get to my gem real quick. Sorry about that detour. I always think the music and the movie and pop culture TV show stuff is super, super interesting. I'm going with Noah Gray. I mean, we talked about it earlier. Somebody put in Noah Gray over 8.5 receiving yards. I like that. I mean, I don't know. I'll double check what the completions are for Patrick Mahomes. I'm looking at it right now because I want to make sure. Okay, so his completions prop, I think this will surprise some people. Now it's juiced to the under, but his completions prop is 23.5 completions. For those of you that don't know, that's really high in any game. Like 20, maybe not in a Mahomes game, but usually like your prototypical quarterback, your prototypical game setup, you'll see 21.5 completions. You'll see maybe 22.5. You typically don't see 23.5, 24.5. Now it's juiced to the under, so we're looking at probably 22-ish completions. It's not like he's not going to throw. And who are some of the reliable targets? Well, we know Travis Kelce is. We know Isaiah Pacheco is. But Noah Gray, Justin Watson, McCole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, they're all kind of on the same playing field when it comes to getting targets. And I think Noah Gray is one of the more reliable guys that gets targets. And honestly, I think it's the short area passing game where we're going to see a lot from Mahomes. And Noah Gray is that guy. Kelce, maybe he gets bracketed, maybe he doesn't, but maybe they've got Kelce covered. I think Noah Gray is sort of the easy find in the middle of the field when Kelce's not open, as opposed to something like Justin Watson, who usually you'll see down the field, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who you usually see down the field. I actually think this number, I know it's just first touchdown, and we're kind of having fun, and we do hit these sometimes, but I honestly think there's value in this number. I think this number should be plus 2,000 tops. I don't think it should be plus 3,000 for Noah Gray, especially knowing what this completions prop is. Patrick Mahomes is going to be slinging around at least a little bit. So yeah, Noah Gray plus 3,000. That is my gem. Danny Brasco, any thoughts on this game that we haven't covered while I look at the chat to see if there's questions that I haven't answered?
Thoughts on the chat that I haven't covered are, I thought of some of my favorite sports movies of all time. So I'll give you some of those tops. I think one of the best ever is Remember the Titans, just from, one of the greatest ever. Personally, I love Raging Bull, big boxing fan, great performance from Robert De Niro. And then a childhood classic, Hardball, Keanu Reeves. Rest in peace to G Baby.
Wow, love that. By the way, Matthew Abel, he says, hey guys, love the show. Boost on FanDuel, Tua and Mahomes, 200 plus, Tua and Mahomes. Okay, 200 plus pass yards and 1 touchdown each, I assume. And he's saying plus 200. Is it a trap? I don't love it. Danny, how about you?
See you say it again. My mic cut out.
No, that's fine. He says there's a boost that he is interested in asking us about. Tua and Mahomes, 200 plus pass yards and 1 touchdown each at plus 200. Any thoughts on that?
I'm wary. I'm wary of the boosts, especially offensive inflated boosts. So I'm going to say pass.
I'm going to say pass as well. By the way, Jinx the Mouse, Any Given Sunday. I love that movie quite a bit. It's my favorite football movie of all time, which I know is not a very popular opinion. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's put the recap screen up once again real quick. Matthew Abel says, thanks, guys. Seemed trappy to me. Yeah, it's a little trappy, especially given the game conditions. The recap screen, we got a lot of picks for Saturday. We're going to have a lot of picks for tomorrow, too. Now, that Bills game got moved, but we're still going to cover the other two games, which have really high flyer totals. We're going to have a lot of props, some of which have already been put out on SportsLine. A lot of sides, a lot of totals to consider. But yeah, I'll go over them real quick. Isaiah Pacheco over 15.5 carries. Dave's got the CJ Stroud pass attempts. He's got the Njoku over 5.5 receptions, Singletary under 83.5 rushing and receiving yards. Somebody in the chat was referencing that because I think that rushing and receiving has gone up for him to like that 87, 88 range. I really like the under there personally. Larry Hartstein and Mike are on the Chiefs minus 3.5. Tua under 239.5 passing yards from Prop Stars. RJ White's got that teaser we talked about with the Texans and the Cowboys. EC, CJ Stroud over 1.5 touchdown passes at plus money. And Danny Brasco, Dolphins, Chiefs under 44. Danny, let me ask you this before we get out of here. Which of these two games are you looking forward to the most? I think my answer is going to be the Cleveland Browns game because I'm really invested in on this game. I got the Elijah Moore number at 36.5, and I'm sorry I didn't get it out in time to give you like the right number, but I like Elijah Moore. I like the Browns. I like the Browns team total over 23.5. I like all things Browns. So like if they don't win this game or score any points, like it's going to be a tough start to the weekend. So I'm really looking forward to that game, which starts in about 15 to 20 minutes. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I got to say, I'm looking most forward to the one on the night slate, Chiefs-Dolphins here. Personally, I've been calling the Dolphins frauds since their massive 70-point blowout win over the Broncos. I thought they've been overinflated since then, and I kind of want to see that come true. Maybe I end up having egg on my face, and they're able to walk into the cold environment and upset the defending champions, who certainly haven't looked like themselves this year so far. So really interested to see what comes after this game, right? Are the Chiefs going to look like, hey, heads up, we're still those Chiefs, or are the Dolphins going to end up being the frauds I think they are?
Yeah, and it's looking that way. I mean, especially when you don't have most of your defense, like that's a problem. And I do think I'm going to end up being on the Kansas City Chiefs -5. But speaking of being on, how about Danny Brasco taking over host responsibilities for a good, what was that? I don't know, 2 to 3 minutes, crushing it, giving out his pick, giving out analysis on the totals. Absolutely love that, Danny Brasco. Thanks for taking over in my time of need. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 12 o'clock. We'll have more of a full crew. We'll have Maestro. We'll have Prop Stars. We'll have myself. We'll go through all of our picks and favorite plays and your favorite plays in the chat. We'll go through all of those for the Sunday slate. Again, that's tomorrow at noon. Meanwhile, have a great, Saturday? We got 2 games today. Honestly, they're both compelling in far different ways, in my opinion. Go Browns. Go Chiefs, because I think I'm going to be on the Chiefs as well now that I've talked it through with Danny Brasco. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Early Edge. On behalf of Josh doing all the work behind the scenes and covering for me while I was out for a couple minutes, and on behalf of Danny Brasco, apparently our new host because he took over so swimmingly while I was out, this is the Early Edge. I am the counselor, and we rest our case.